class, well, the first hybrid Monday class that I've been involved with. So it's all a little bit of an experiment. But anyway, you're very, very welcome to join us for an evening of practice and contemplation of the teachings of the Buddha. As you know, we usually start off with a short puja, and those of you who are here will find the chanting on page 19, the dedication of offerings. We'll chant in English this evening. So if you find the place, and then first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn to the shrine and light the candles and incense. These are the traditional offerings that we make to a shrine: candles, incense, and flowers. So to the Blessed One, the Lord, who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Now let us pay our preliminary homage to the Buddha. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened One. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened One. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened One. Now let us chant the recollection of the Buddha. A good word of the blessed
Blessed One's reputation has spread as follows. He, the Blessed One, is indeed the pure one, the perfectly enlightened one. He is impeccable in conduct and understanding, the accomplished one, the knower of the worlds. He trains perfectly those who wish to be trained. He is teacher of gods and humans. He is awake and holy.
Turn to page 21 to the recollection of the Dhamma.
25.
Oh, 25. Now let us chant the recollection of the Dhamma. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading in words to be experienced individually by the wise. And turn to page 27, the recollection of the Sangha. Now let us chant recollection of the Sangha. They are the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, who have practiced directly, who have practiced insightfully, those who practice with integrity. That is the forebears, the 8 kinds of noble beings. These are the Blessed One's disciples. Such ones are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect. They give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world. What we're going to do now is have the traditional request for the refuge and precepts, and Wendy has very kindly undertaken to make the request on everybody's behalf. As most of you will be aware, the refuges and precepts are the basic structure for our life, for our practice, according to the way that the Buddha encourages us. Sometimes people think that Buddhism is just about meditation, making the mind calm and peaceful and enjoying being peaceful and living in a state of bliss and harmony. But in fact, there's a lot more to it than that. Part of it is taking refuge. So seeing that the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, we just did the chanting, recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, that these are phenomena, they're aspects of our lives that are very real, and we need to kind of realize them, make them real, make them something that become part of our way of looking at life. So the Buddha, just the capacity to see clearly, not being deluded, not being confused by what our thinking mind's telling us. Thinking mind is very good at ideas and planning and worrying about this and that and the other and remembering and regretting and all the rest of it. But the Buddha can see right through that. The Buddha just sees this is the mind thinking. It's not the truth as we're experiencing right now. The truth as we're experiencing right now is the Dhamma. It's what we can know for ourselves. We're fully present. And our practice is about just learning how to establish that sense of presence, present moment awareness. This is actually where meditation does come in, training for the mind to be present. And then the Sangha, like here, it's very lovely for the first time. There's a group of us, quite a few people here in the library at the Buddhist Society. And people have commented on how lovely it is to just be here, actually with flesh and blood human beings. There's a different quality of support, although obviously joining virtually, participating virtually has its value. And I'm very pleased that so many of you are doing that. But Sangha is like the community, the disciples, the people who listen to the teachings, who apply them in their lives. It also implies a kind of sincerity. It's not just a kind of clever intellectual idea or philosophical theory, but something that we really take quite seriously. So I think having a group of people doing it can support that sense of sincerity, practicing with integrity, directly, insightfully. So it actually supports us in allowing ourselves, in allowing our lives to be transformed. So those are the refuges which we'll be taking, and then the precepts, which are basic ethical guidelines. And I talk about them each time because I think, well, we can always do with being reminded. So they support us in living carefully and responsibly. So not deliberately causing harm to any other living being, not engaging in any kind of dishonesty, cheating, taking things that we don't have a right to, that hasn't been given to us, any kind of sexual misconduct, exploiting others, so using our sexuality in a careful, responsible way within a suitable context, being careful about how we speak. Like the precept itself is translated as lying, but I like to think of it as much more than that. The Buddha lists 4 kinds of wrong speech, and so to refrain from lying, to refrain from divisive speech, gossiping, setting people against each other, to refrain from harsh speech, abusive speech, and to refrain from just idle chit-chat, just talking for the sake of talking. So being careful about how we speak. And then the 5th precept, to refrain from intoxication. So not using drugs or alcohol, which can cloud the mind, which can cause us to lose our sense of perspective, what's appropriate, what's proper, and can cause us to create all kinds of harm and difficulty for ourselves and also for each other. So these are the basic ethical guidelines. And now Wendy will make the request on behalf of everybody, and then I invite you all to join in. Please stay muted if you're at home, but you're very welcome to join in as I give the precepts. It's on page
126.
126. Okay, please.
Maya Maya Tisaranena Saha Pancha Shilani Yachama Dutyampi Maya Maya Tisaranena Saha Pancha Shilani Yachama Tatyampi Maya Maya Tisaranena Saha Pancha Shilani Yachama.
So I'll recite Namo Tassa 3 times, and then I invite you to recite it 3 times. After that, we just go line by line. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisaranat gamanani titang. Panatipata verapmani sikhapadang samadhihami.
Panatipata veramani sikhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adinadana verapmani sikhapadang samadhihami.
Adinadana veramani sikhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Kame sumichachara verapmani sikhapadang samadhihami.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
Musawada verapmani sikhapadang samadhihami.
Musawada veramani sikhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
Surameraya Majapamadatana verapmani sikhapadang samadhihami.
Surameraya Majapamadatana veramani sikhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Imani panchasikhapadani silena sugatinyanti, silena bhoga sampada, silena nibbutiyanti, tasma silang visotaye. So you say something. I always love it when people determine the 5 precepts, and the little bit that I chanted at the end means that these precepts, or virtue, goodness, is a vehicle for happiness. Virtue is a vehicle for true wealth, like the heart wealth. Your heart is full and glad. And virtue is a vehicle for perfect liberation from all suffering. So I can't imagine anything better. So they're very simple guidelines, but have a very profound effect when we live with them and practice with them over the whole of our lives. Somebody was asking me yesterday, if I noticed any change, since having started my monastic life in 1979, and whether I'd noticed any change over the years. And I sort of thought about it, and I thought, well, not very much, but one thing I do notice is I'm a lot happier. And the other thing I notice is I don't have too much regret. I've made mistakes, but I haven't deliberately done things that I knew were going to be harmful. And that's a very good feeling in the heart. When we think about the Eightfold Path, in fact, they say that the middle section, right speech, right action, right livelihood, naturally lead to the settling of the mind. The mind can settle when there's this sense of gladness and ease, knowing that we've done our best. And okay, if there was a mistake, then we learn from it. So I find these precepts deceptively simple, very profound. So it always makes me happy to contemplate the precepts in this way. So what we're going to do now is we'll have a period of meditation, and I encourage you to find a comfortable posture. I'm going to slightly shift myself. So if you're on the floor, then cross-legged is good if you can do it, but otherwise kneeling is fine. And if you're on a chair, try to sit so that you're sitting nicely upright, ideally not kind of leaning back on the back of the chair, sit, unsupported with, just use the natural upright posture of the body rather than relying on the back of the seat for support. But if you have a very difficult back condition, then of course, lean back if you need to. And I know sometimes there are people who need to lie down to meditate, and that's, again, totally fine. Because our aspiration in meditation is to be present, and wherever we are, however we're sitting or standing, we can be present. But it is a fact that, if you have a nice, upright, alert posture, that's a good support for wakefulness. Sometimes when I'm feeling very sleepy, I actually stand up, because you're a bit less likely to fall asleep standing up. So nice upright posture, the head held up so that if your eyes are open, you're looking straight ahead. And if you prefer to close the eye, that's fine. I usually like to close my eyes unless I'm feeling very sleepy, in which case opening the eyes is a very helpful strategy for keeping nice and alert. So we establish our posture first of all. Head up, shoulders relaxed, face relaxed. And just take a few moments just to establish that quality of present moment awareness. So often the mind is filled with ideas that pull us into the future or pull us into the past. And this is natural. At the end of a busy day, there are going to be perhaps thoughts of the day that we've just had, or anticipating something happening in the future. But during this time of meditation, we try to avoid following those thoughts of the past or the future. We try to establish and maintain present moment awareness. So one way of doing that is just taking a few moments to really attune to the body. Just notice how the body is right now. Notice the contact, the feeling of pressure on the mat or the chair where we're sitting. feet on the floor, contact with the earth. This is something that's quite obvious that you can be aware of. And it's definitely here and now. A direct awareness, a direct experience of the contact with the chair or the floor. Also aware of the trunk of the body, rising up from the base. Aware of the shoulders, aware of the head. Aware of the space around the body. And if there are others sharing the space, aware of the other human beings in the same space. Aware of any distracting sounds, either in the space or outside on the street, out in the countryside, wherever you happen to be. So here in London, there's a lot of traffic noise that we can notice. And just acknowledging that this is there. Maybe we would prefer perfect silence, but there are sounds. And we can accommodate those in our practice, just aware that there is sound. There may also be tension in the body. And so first of all, I'm going to just gently lead the awareness around the body and suggesting that we gently relax, that we breathe away feelings of tension in the body. So aware of the head, the scalp, and taking a few moments to gently breathe through, almost as though this wonderful breath energy can disperse any tension, any discomfort, the muscles in the head, feeling the scalp loosen and soften. And similarly with the face, gently breathing through, releasing tension from around the forehead and the eyes, the cheeks and the mouth. So that the face itself becomes quite loose, quite soft, no particular expression, letting go of any concerns we may have about how we appear, how the face appears, just letting it rest, letting it relax. Such a relief. It doesn't matter. Allowing the shoulders to relax, allowing them to drop a little. Breathing through, releasing tension from around the shoulder area. Similarly with the arms. Breathing down through the muscles of the upper arm, the forearms, wrists, palms and fingers. Allowing the hands to rest on the knees or in the lap, however's comfortable for you. Now we bring the awareness into the trunk of the body, into the heart center, the upper part of the chest, gently breathing through the heart center, releasing any sense of constriction or tightness there, allowing a softening and opening of the heart. Moving down into the solar plexus, noticing if there's any sense of agitation, fluttery feeling or a tight feeling. See if you can be conscious of that and consciously breathe through, allowing a softening, a settling in the solar plexus, the middle part of the body. Now a few very deep belly breaths, breathing right down into the belly, taking your time to do a long, slow, easy inhalation. And once you've breathed in fully and completely, then again a long, slow, easy exhalation. Breathing out fully and completely, letting go of all of the concerns, all of the cares, the worries. Just being fully here with the out-breath. And then when you're ready, when the body is ready, I should say, another in-breath. Taking your time, enjoying the sensation of the body, breathing in fully and completely. And an out-breath in your own time. Now we relax the legs, breathing down through the muscles of the legs, muscles of the thighs, around the knees, calves, ankles, feet. And finally, the back part of the body, releasing tension from around the spine, beginning at the base of the skull and gently working with your awareness, breathing through the muscles around the neck area, down through the back of the shoulders, the back of the chest and the rib cage, back of the waist, and right down to the base of the spine, so that the body is fully supported, nicely upright, without any extra strain or tension. You can imagine a column of light or energy extending through the crown, through the body, into the earth. This column of light or energy maintaining this beautiful upright posture, and yet at the same time anchoring us on planet Earth. And continuing to use the breath as a focus for the awareness. If you find it helpful, linking the breath with a word or a phrase. And the traditional Buddhist mantra is Bud with the in-breath, Do with the out-breath. Or you may prefer just to be with the breath itself, enjoying the sensations as the ribcage expands, allowing the air to rush into the lungs, and then noticing the air being compressed with the out-breath, the air flowing out back into the space around us. A slight pause, and then the next in-breath. As far as possible, maintaining the awareness with this natural bodily process. Aware of the in-breath, aware of slight pause, aware of the out-breath as it's happening, and another pause before the next in-breath. Gently setting aside any intrusive thoughts, memories or plans, anchoring the awareness with the breath, here, now. Try not to complicate the practice. Just keep it very, very simple. If you find yourself distracted, thinking about something else, just come back to the next breath. It's no big deal. It's natural for the mind to wander. Just come back to the breath. Not a problem. Gradually training, guiding, supporting the mind to be present, attuned to Dhamma, to this moment as we experience it, here and now. Just allowing the mind to rest with the breath. No need to think or to plan or to worry or work anything out. A chance just to be here now. Just enjoying this simple bodily process. Breathing in, breathing out. We use the breath as a support for calming, for settling the mind. An easeful, soothing sensation. Something that's happening that has its own rhythm that we can be aware of as it's happening here, now. We can also contemplate the simple bodily process of the breath entering and leaving the body as a way of cultivating insight into the nature of the body. We breathe in air from the space around us, filling the lungs. For a moment, it becomes part of this body. And then at a certain point, the air flows out of the body into the space around us. No longer part of this body. Continuous process of exchange. Air flowing in, air flowing out. It has its own flow, its own rhythm. We can't fix it, we can't hold on to it. Continuously changing, flowing, just like the whole of our life. Having breathed in, we have to start breathing out again. Having breathed out, we need to breathe in. This is the nature of the body. The extent to which we can control this process of breathing is extremely limited. It happens. The body breathes. The physiological processes of breathing are very subtle. We really can't fathom what happens. The air flows into the lungs and all kinds of processes happen inside the lungs. We know this. Exchange with the blood, circulation of the body, maintaining our life, the most mysterious and wonderful way. We can't know those processes intellectually, but we can experience the in-breath, we can experience the out-breath as it happens. This is the extent of it. Breathing in, breathing out. We can also observe the mind. We can be aware of the mind, noticing when the mind is comfortably attuned to the breath, noticing when the mind is restless, agitated, full of memories, full of plans, thinking. We can observe this, we can know this. Mindful of the mind, mindful of the mental processes. And again, aware of the limitation in terms of how much we can control it. We can support a settling, and the mind has its own energy that we work with patiently, calmly, with a sense of great kindness. We may want the mind to settle, not to be thinking, but as we may have discovered, if we feel agitated and upset with the thinking mind, it only gets more miserable, more busy, more frantic. So we learn how to be patient with the mind as it is, coming back again and again and again. Celebrating this insight into the nature of mind, into the nature of body, into the nature of breath and breathing. One breath, and then the next breath. Thank you. It's so easy to get discouraged about our meditation. The mind doesn't settle the way we think it should, or it doesn't stay settled, or it might get settled one time, but then doesn't get settled the next time. We may really think we're getting somewhere. The mind is calm and at ease and feels very spacious and wonderful. And then the next day we sit down to do our daily practice and mind's all over the place. And so we can feel frustrated, we can feel discouraged. But I like to really encourage this attitude of curiosity and using every opportunity to learn about the body and the mind. And the Buddha taught us that life as a human being is difficult. there is suffering, dukkha, first noble truth. And I think sometimes we can take this teaching in rather a theoretical way, not realizing it's about our actual day by day, moment by moment experience. Realizing this is it's about our own body and mind, about our own life. And wanting the mind to settle when it's not settled, that's dukkha, that's suffering. So what did the Buddha say about suffering? The Buddha said, suffering is to be understood. So when we're with the mind and it's not settling, different things can happen. We can try harder, we can feel frustrated, we can feel like a hopeless case. These are all things that I've experienced, and probably some of you have experienced it, kind of gritting your teeth, trying harder and harder and harder, and just the mind getting more and more difficult. This can happen. This is a perpetuation of dukkha. This is a suffering that increases the suffering. Or we can choose to see this is an opportunity for understanding suffering. So what's the opportunity for insight into the nature of the mind? How much control do we really have over our minds? Can we just stop it thinking when we want it to? Flick of a finger, stop thinking. I've never been able to do that. People often wonder about not self. I often have questions. How can I learn about not self? You can see anicca, which is change. You can experience plenty of dukkha, but anatta, not self, the third characteristic. How can I experience that? Well, just observing how little control we have over the mind, how difficult it is to make the mind do what we want it to do, to make it settle. How difficult that is. How we begin to have a sense that the mind has its own energy. That we have to learn how to work with the mind. It's not like a machine that we can turn on when we want it to work in a particular way and then just switch it off. We switch off our computer at the end of the day, press the button, it says power, and then we go to either sleep or off, and then it stops. Phew, that's the end of it. Mine's not like that. You can try, but for most of us, it requires a much more patience, much more kindness, much more of a sense of kind of respectful cooperation. We can also contemplate the breathing in the way that I guided us. We can, if the mind is not as settled as we would like it to be, we can actually just notice. We can use the mind to contemplate the breath, the physiological process of the body breathing, and begin to see that I'm not, that the body is part of nature. Begin to challenge that identification with the body and the mind. Like some people I talk to, they say, "Well, this is me. This is definitely me." If I bump into something, if I hurt myself, it's me. I'm hurt. And So the identification with the body is a very natural thing, but the Buddha encourages us not to assume a natural identification with the body, but rather to investigate, to question the nature of the body and the mind. Is it really who and what you are? So using the contemplation of the breath as a way of investigating. So even if the mind isn't totally calm and peaceful, even if our meditation isn't quite the way we think it should be, we can use the meditation. You can turn it around, contemplate it. Contemplate the breath as a natural process, natural function of the body. Appreciate just how little we know about the body and the mind. Contemplate the mind as just contemplate the mind as you experience it. Learning how to work with the mind, learning how to not add to the suffering of our lives. So the invitation is to understand suffering, not to try to get rid of it, even though that's of course what we want to do. We'd like to get rid of it. We'd love to be liberated from suffering. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And of course it'd be wonderful. But we're not going to get liberated from suffering just because we want to, through following that desire. We're going to get liberated from suffering through understanding suffering, through investigating. So why do we suffer? We suffer because of wanting. Wanting pleasurable experiences, as much pleasure as possible and as little pain as possible. That's what I'd like. I can't imagine that any of you are any different. Nobody wants pain. All of us enjoy pleasure, delicious food, nice weather that we like. I quite like coolish weather, so I'm enjoying this autumn time. I just love the autumn, the wind and the leaves and the fragrances in the air. I find it a very, very wonderful season. Some of you probably prefer summer or spring. So I'm quite happy with autumn. But winter's going to come, then it's going to get cold. So wanting it to be pleasurable, wanting it to be the way that we want it to be. Not wanting to be ill. Most of you, many people have been ill over this last couple of years. Some people have been extremely ill. Many people have died. People have lost people who are dear to them. There's been a lot of disruption, a lot of pain, sorrow as a result of this pandemic. And now it's just beginning to ease up. I mean, people are still getting sick, but and nobody wants sickness. And a few people want it because then they say it boosts your immune system. If you can have a good dose of COVID, then you're immune from it. So at Chithurst, where I've been just for the weekend, we were supposed to have a whole bunch of meetings there, but half the community got sick, and they were all celebrating that they'd got sick. It was sort of adding up how many of the community had got sick and tested positive, and how many were symptomatic and maybe testing positive. And so soon Chithurst will be completely immune. So yes, we don't really want to be sick, other than as a way of creating immunity. We don't want the pain of loss, of separation. This is natural. We also want to exist as a personality. We want to be. And this is a bit more difficult to really fully appreciate, fully understand. And I found one of the best ways of explaining it is If you're having a discussion with someone and there begins to be a bit of a disagreement, what happens? Sometimes I found myself in discussion with somebody over something that is really pretty trivial, but it can get very heated, and I can feel myself sort of filling up with this sort of sense of me wanting to be right, wanting to kind of exist apart from this other person who's disagreeing with me, seeing them as other. They don't have the same view as me. So there's me here and them there. Sense of separation, sense of division. This is very common in our society. All kinds of divisions. Race, religion, politics. These are the main ones, I think. Social class. Yes, there's endless ways that we create division, create separation, and identity. Buddha encourages us to challenge that, to really investigate that. So this is the second kind of wanting to be, wanting to stand out, to be somebody special. The third one is just not wanting not to be. So not wanting to be bothered. Just kind of blanking out. So we call this kama tanha, desire for sense pleasures, bhava tanha, the desire to become, vipapadana, the desire not to exist, not to become. So these are the three kinds of desire. And if we attach to those, there's going to be a struggle, because we're not always going to be able to keep things just the way that we want them to be. We're not always going to be able to exist in the way that we would like. In fact, most of the time we create a sense of who and what we would like to be, and we measure ourselves, and we're never good enough, or very rarely good enough. And no matter how hard you try to blank everything out, there's a limit to how much you can sleep away your life, or obliterate your, come into a state of unconsciousness through use of drugs or alcohol, or you can't. The invitation is not to not exist, but to exist and to learn as much as we can from our lives. So three kinds of desire that we tend to attach to that cause us to struggle. And then the third noble truth is that there's a cessation of desire, the cessation of suffering, which comes about when we let go of desire. Okay, well, I would like it to stay autumn forever, but autumn is going to become winter. This is pretty likely. It's going to get cold. Okay, well, there's no point me holding on to the desire for it to stay autumn forever, so I'll let go of that desire. I'll allow the seasons to change as they will. I'll allow things to be the way that they are. I'm used to Milntuim, where it's quiet outside. Perhaps there's the wind in the trees, perhaps there's rain, perhaps there's the sound of a cow distressed somewhere in a field down below, or sheep. But none of this traffic. No people walking outside talking, disturbing my meditation. But if I struggle with these things here in the Buddhist Society, then I'm definitely going to suffer. So we accommodate them. Okay, these things are here. That's okay. I'd like it to be quiet. I'd like it to be very, very peaceful and calm, but it's not. But that's okay. When we can be really fully present with things as they are, even when things are extremely difficult, we come to a place of peace. The peace of perfect presence, perfect acceptance. And some of you may have experienced times of very serious illness. I've certainly had a little bit of very serious illness over the years, and a lot of quite extreme physical pain. But one of the things that I've noticed is that when I can be fully present with that, fully present with that, not asking for things to be any different from the way that they are, there can be a tremendous sense of peace. So when I hear of somebody who's very, very ill, or somebody who's in a state of great grief or distress, my heart of compassion is not, obviously one would like them to not be ill, but to just expect that is asking too much. But what I can wish for them is the capacity to be fully present with their sickness, with their sorrow, so that they can experience that sense of deep peace that is where the healing can begin. So that's what I long for, that's what I support, is that they may attune to Dhamma, which is the great medicine. And when we had a nun visiting who'd been trained in Thailand, and she was always talking about the Dhamma medicine. I never quite knew what she was talking about, but over the years I've contemplated this and found the medicine of perfect presence, where the suffering, the struggle ceases, even when things are really difficult, really unpleasant. And then the Buddha taught the Eightfold Path that we cultivate through our practice. The Sila, the precepts, the gathering of the mind, and the insight that comes as the mind gathers, understanding of the nature of our existence, the nature of suffering, and the possibility of ending suffering. So I've talked rather more than I intended to, but these are words that I offer for your contemplation. You don't have to believe everything I say, but please contemplate if you would like to. See what you can learn from it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have a better way of looking at things, and that's totally fine. And we have a little bit of time now, so if there are any questions, either from those of you who are here or from anybody on Zoom, if you have a question, you can raise your virtual hand or your real hand or send a chat message, and we'll allow just a moment or two, just so that what I've said can settle a little bit, and see if anything arises in the way of a question or something you would like to ask about. I'm always amused that it's a guaranteed way for everybody's mind to empty out. Ask, are there any questions? And immediately the mind goes blank. Yes.
Okay. So it is a matter of holding that fountain, not believing it, letting it down. What is the best way of letting it down? By doing that?
Now, I'm going to repeat that because I'm not sure if everybody will have heard it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's all right. Now I'll repeat it, and you can tell me if I got it right. So the question here about what I said about just holding the suffering and allowing it to go. And the question is really, what is the best way of doing that? So the Buddha talked a lot about patience, the importance of patience. And this is something that we can cultivate throughout our lives. There are always opportunities for cultivating patience. And one of the things with patience is that we can fool ourselves. We can think, I'm being patient because I want this thing to change and to go. And sometimes people say to me, well, I've been practicing patience for 2 years now and it still hasn't changed. And I say to them, well, that's not really patience. That's a kind of bargaining. So what patience requires is a willingness to be with the condition for as long as it needs to be there. Now, so this can be a useful strategy, just saying, okay, well, I'm willing to be with this mind state or this condition of the body or whatever it is for as long as it needs to be there. You know, give it all the time in the world. So this is a very helpful first step. There are some conditions that actually we can transform. But that really only happens when we've accepted it. So sometimes there are states of mind, for example, like negativity or ill will, jealousy, these kind of states. What I've found, when I'm not mindful is I struggle with them. I feel I shouldn't have this. I must get rid of it. This is bad. And we tend to just compound it. And we start hating our hatred or hating our jealousy. And that it gets worse than hating ourselves, feeling hopeless. So that just kind of perpetuates it. So if you find that happening, then it's a little bit of a sign that we haven't completely let go of it. But if we can just come to a place where we can see, okay, this is not helpful. This is not helpful. What can I? Then there are strategies that the Buddha recommends for working with difficult mind states. There's a very useful sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya that some of you may be familiar with. It's number 20, how to work with distracting thoughts. And one of them is to replace a thought with another thought. So, say with ill will, to replace it with a thought of kindness. So if I'm feeling a lot of ill will towards somebody, sometimes what I can do is I can maybe practice a kind of empathy, try and see things from their point of view. That's sometimes possible. I can also consider practicing kindness towards myself. And this is something I think many of us tend to forget, that actually we have to start with ourselves. So if I'm feeling a lot of ill will towards somebody who's maybe being really, really difficult, maybe they're being very cruel, really unkind, taking advantage of us. I've been in situations sometimes when people have taken advantage, and I get very confused by that, very upset by that. So rather than trying to be kind to them, what could be helpful is to turn the heart of kindness towards myself. Okay, Candasiri, this is really difficult. You're really struggling with this, aren't you? And that can be a helpful way of just diffusing the situation. So it's a way of establishing presence, establishing mindfulness. So replacing one thought with another thought. Another strategy is seeing how unpleasant the thought is, how difficult it is, and which can bring a real sense of, I don't want to think like this. Sometimes there are people who have a habit of negative thinking all the time. And you just think, well, do I really want to have this critical mind all the time? This is ugly, this is unpleasant. And that can be an incentive to drop it. Another thing you can do is to put your attention onto something else. So if you're feeling really angry and upset and think, I shouldn't feel angry and upset, and rather than struggling with the mind and trying to stop the mind from feeling upset, how does it affect you physically? Ask that. So instead of approaching it from up here. Come into the body. What's happening in my body? Because there's always a corresponding bodily reaction to any strong emotion. So come into the body. Be interested in the body. And then there are other strategies. But as soon as you start contemplating it as a phenomenon, there's already a letting go. So instead of thinking, I've got to let go of this thing and feeling tense and upset because I know I should let go, just being a bit curious about it. What's going on here? What's happening? Why am I so upset? What is the problem? That, for me, I found is a very helpful way of just letting go. And instead of it being my problem, my difficulty that I've got to do something about, just see, okay, this human being here, this particular human being is struggling. What's going on? What's the problem? And so to investigate at that sort of level.
Thank you.
Those are things I find helpful. Yeah. Anything else? Any chat messages? No. Or virtual hands? No. And I think one of the things to keep in mind about practice is it's a skill. And it's a skill that we can develop, that we can cultivate in our lives. Once we have a sense of what it is that we're working with, we can, and the Buddha gave many strategies for working with different states of mind and body, but he also strongly encouraged us to cultivate our own strategies, because each one of us we have different situations, different backgrounds, different ways of relating to ourselves depending on how we've been brought up. So many Westerners hate themselves. That's one of the big problems. Many of us just feel we're not good enough and we're never going to be good enough. We have these very high standards. Whereas in many Asian people think we're completely weird. They can't understand how we could hate ourselves. So when Ajahn Sumedho first came to Britain, having been in Thailand for 10 years, one of the things he observed was that whereas in Thailand, people didn't have a problem with hating themselves at all. But rather the strongest problem, certainly in the monastic communities that he'd been part of, was just dealing with sexuality, because they're very sensual. And so, the advice for many of the monastics in Thailand is contemplate the unpleasantness of the body. So they're always going off to autopsies and things, and looking at bodies and contemplating the sort of the repulsiveness of the bodies as ways of just really investigating the body. And when Ajahn Sumedho came to England, what he found was that this was the last thing that we needed to be doing. That Westerners are very good at hating themselves and hating their bodies and feeling disgusted about their bodies. And what was needed for Western people was much more of a sense of kindness, because we're not very good at caring for ourselves, respecting ourselves, supporting well-being in ourselves. We're much better at being critical and averse and negative and seeing what's wrong. So because of our particular culture, the way that many people in Western culture have been conditioned, what he encouraged was kindness. So when I meet people and talk with people. I'm much more interested in encouraging people to love themselves, to respect themselves, to encourage themselves, and to really contemplate what it is that undermines a sense of well-being. In fact, what we'll do to end this evening, we'll chant the reflection on universal well-being, which is a very helpful reflection, where the Buddha, where we've started off, may I abide in well-being, which of course we would all like to abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, which, sometimes we think, well, that means, not having people being hostile towards us. But the way that I understand it is so that we don't have hostile feelings in our hearts. So we're not either hostile towards ourselves, or we don't have a sense of ill will towards ourselves, or towards anybody else, of course. But to see how harmful these mind states are, how they undermine a sense of well-being, how anxiety, sort of constantly worrying about things, undermines a sense of well-being. So the advice is that what we wish for ourselves, may I abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety. May I be free from these things. And may I maintain well-being in myself. And may I avoid or learn how to let go, how to relinquish those feelings when they arise, those emotions when they arise. And take them very, very seriously. If it's either ill will towards yourself, learning how to recognize the extent of ill will we experience towards ourselves. And learning how to take it seriously. How can I transform this to a heart of kindness towards this being here? And then we have a similar reflection for others. And then compassion, may all beings be released from all suffering. And then sympathetic joy, may they not be separated from the good fortune they've attained. May they enjoy the sense of the goodness of their lives. May we enjoy the sense of the goodness of our lives. The goodness in actually having, those of you who've actually made the effort to come to the Buddhist Society to participate in the class. Those of you at home who've set aside the time to participate and contemplate these teachings. This is something to celebrate. And then just to recognize how important it is, how we live. That has an effect, the law of karma. So to avoid actions and speech that cause harm to ourselves or others. Living carefully, responsibly. So I invite you to turn to what page is it? Page 40. Or 41 actually, probably. Can we get that on the screen? Very good. And in case I forget, just a big thank you to Imogen for having been the host this evening, and Wendy for having set it all up, and the Buddhist Society for hosting those of us who are here.
I think you need to get rid of that message, otherwise the people will also see that. That one just needs to stay vetted.
I think it's on that computer because it's not on mine. That's the problem. Yeah, we'll work it out for next week, I think. No, I noticed it. So.
Okay.
So can everyone see the words of the chant? Okay. So we can chant this together. Now let us chant the reflection on universal well-being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. And we'll end with the closing homage, which is page
28. Page 28.
Page 28. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.
Thank you very much, Ajahn, for teaching. Wonderful.
Thank you. Okay.
That's what everyone like prayers.
I forgot to say thank you to Martin for coming all the way in from Hemel Hempstead to join us this evening and help with the technical glitches along the way. And are you going to be here next week, or don't know?
No, I won't be.
No.
On my way.
Yeah. Okay. I wish you well, everybody. And I don't have a screen, so I can't sort of see you to wave bye-bye, but I'll wave bye-bye and wish you well. And I'm sure we'll meet again somehow, virtually or otherwise. And let's say bye-bye to everybody who's been here. It's lovely. Very nice to have some real people to share these things with.